You ever hear something so out of place that your entire body just freezes? That's what happened the night the lullaby first crept into my apartment. It was late, maybe close to midnight. I was bone tired, one of those days that drains everything out of you. All I wanted was sleep. I remember lying on my side, the blanket pulled up to my chin, and just as I was slipping into that hazy space between waking and dreaming, I heard it. A song. Faint. Melodic. A lullaby. So soft it might have been mistaken for a passing thought or the remnant of a dream. I blinked into the dark, unsure if it was real or not. At first I figured it had to be coming from another apartment. Old buildings like mine are basically made of cardboard when it comes to soundproofing. But then I remembered I live on my top floor. My walls are thick, my neighbors quiet, and at that hour, the building is usually silent enough that I can hear the hum of my refrigerator across the apartment. But this was different. The lullaby wasn't muffled or distant. It was clear, uncomfortably close, like someone was sitting right next to me, whispering a tune meant to rock a baby to sleep. The melody was slow and gentle, but there was something off about it. It didn't soothe me. It unsettled me. My skin prickled like it does when you sense someone staring at you in the dark. I sat up, my breath shallow, trying to trace the source of the sound. I strained my ears, holding perfectly still. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it all. But no, there it was again, just above me, like it was floating through the air on invisible wings. I live alone. There was no music player, no open window. The TV was off. The building was dead quiet, except for that haunting lullaby curling through the shadows of my room. And then, just as suddenly as it had come, the sound stopped. I can't explain how heavy the silence felt afterward. It was like the air had thickened, like the apartment itself was frozen in place, listening with me. I lay back down, trying to convince myself it was stress, maybe a weird auditory hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation. But that feeling, that weight in the air, that oppressive stillness, it stayed with me long after the melody vanished. Even as I closed my eyes and pulled the blanket tighter, I could feel it. Something had been there. Something had leaned in close enough to breathe that lullaby into my ear. I didn't sleep much that night, and I wish I could say that was the end of it, that whatever it was faded away by morning. But the truth is, it was only the beginning. The next night, I crawled into bed with a heavy feeling in my chest, trying to tell myself I was being ridiculous. Whatever I thought I heard the night before, it had to be a fluke, stress, sleep paralysis, maybe even a half-dream I confused for real life. I clung to any explanation I could, because the alternative, that something was actually in my apartment with me, was too terrifying to accept. I left the lights on in the hallway, kept the bedroom door open a crack, just enough to feel like I wasn't boxed in. My phone was on the nightstand, flashlight app ready, and I even left the TV on mute just for a sense of background noise, some thin barrier between me and the silence. It didn't help, because just as I started to drift off again, the lullaby returned. Soft, delicate, the same melody as before. But this time it didn't feel like a surprise. It felt like a pattern, like something had been waiting for the exact moment my body began to relax, and then it uncoiled from the shadows to sing. I sat up immediately, heart thudding in my chest, like a war drum. The sound was clearer now, no question about it. It wasn't coming from the walls, or the vents, or any part of the building. It was inside my room, inside my space. It hovered, weightless and eerie, like it was curling around me. The melody was so gentle it might have seemed beautiful if it weren't so wrong, and I wasn't going to lie there again, paralyzed by fear. I had to know. I threw the covers off and stepped onto the cold floor, muscles tense, every nerve alive, with dread. I crept through the apartment like I was afraid of waking something up. Kitchen, empty. Living room, still. Bathroom, door wide open, nothing inside. I checked closets under the bed, even behind the shower curtain. Nothing. But the music didn't stop. It followed me. Everywhere I went, it was just behind me. Never louder, never closer, but always there. Like it was tethered to me. Like it was using my own breath to hum its tune. I stood in the center of the apartment, turning in slow circles, trying to pinpoint the source, but it was like chasing smoke in the dark. The melody drifted through. The space without origin, without echo, like it was being sung directly into my skull. Eventually, the lullaby faded again, vanishing into the stillness. The next morning, I was a mess. Bloodshot eyes, nerves shot, running on caffeine and adrenaline. I stopped one of my neighbors in the hallway, an older guy named Vincent, and casually asked if he'd heard any music the night before. He looked at me like I'd asked him if the walls were breathing. Music? At night? No, I didn't hear anything, he said, backing away slightly like I was unstable. The others were no different. Blank stares, concerned frowns. Nobody heard a thing, nobody felt anything. Just me. That's when I knew. This wasn't something external I could blame on bad insulation or noisy tenants. Whatever was happening, it was happening to me. And whether I liked it or not, it was getting closer. It didn't stop. That lullaby became my nightly curse. At first it came gently, still soft, still sweet. But night after night it returned, stronger, more confident, like it was feeding off my fear. The line between comfort and menace grew thinner with each passing hour. It wasn't just a song anymore, it was a warning, a presence, a ghostly ritual performed just for me. By the end of the week, I'd stopped pretending it wasn't real, and that's when other things started happening. The first was subtle. I woke up one morning and noticed the window in my bedroom was open just a crack. I live on the top floor of a secure building. I know I locked it before going to bed. I always check. I'm compulsive about it. But there it was, yawning slightly, letting in the early morning chill like a breath from something unseen. I stared at it for a long time before closing it again. That unease, the kind that makes your skin crawl and your stomach knot, didn't leave me for the rest of the day. After that, it escalated. Books that had been stacked neatly on the coffee table were found in the kitchen sink. My toothbrush ended up in the freezer. A framed photo of my parents was discovered face down on the floor, cracked down the center, even though it had been mounted securely on the wall for years. Nothing was stolen, nothing overtly malicious, just wrong, disordered, like someone or something was trying to make me feel invaded without ever revealing itself. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being toyed with. Then, the lullaby changed. It was no longer soft or gentle. It became warped, like a cassette tape left in the sun too long. The melody twisted, dissonant, its notes dragging painfully like fingers on piano keys that didn't want to be touched. And beneath that crooked tune, there were whispers. I'd lie in bed, every muscle locked, listening to those faint murmurs float through the dark. They didn't make sense at first, just vague fragments. But over time, I started to pick out shapes in the sound. A name, my name, repeated over and over, like someone trying to summon me. I needed proof. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone about it. I didn't even trust myself. So I set my phone on the nightstand one night and hit record before I went to bed. I told myself I wouldn't listen to it unless something happened again. But of course, something always did. I barely slept. The lullaby came, soft at first, then garbled and suffocating. I lay there, frozen under the sheets, wide-eyed and too afraid to look into the corners of the room. When morning came, I played the recording. There it was, the lullaby, clear, undeniable. No dream, no imagination, real. But then something else played on the audio, something that stole the breath from my lungs. A voice, my voice, humming the melody. The exact same tune, my cadence, my tone. But I have no memory of singing. None. I stared at the screen, my finger trembling over the pause button. I played it again, over and over. It was me, no doubt. But how? Was I sleep singing? Possessed? Or was something else inside this apartment using me, borrowing my voice like it was a mask? Whatever the answer was, one thing became terrifyingly clear. I was no longer just hearing the lullaby. I had become part of it. After that night, there was no more pretending. I recorded every single evening. My phone became my only companion in the growing madness, the sole witness to the strange unraveling of my reality. Every morning I'd play back the recordings, and every time there was something new, something worse. The lullaby was always there, yes, but now it had layers. Underneath my humming voice, because yes, I kept singing night after night without remembering, there were other voices. Faint, crackling whispers, like distant radio static. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but they weren't just sounds. They were intentional. Words, sentences, things spoken directly into the dark. Then came the giggle. It was a child's laugh, quiet, delicate, and completely out of place. I froze the first time I heard it. I must have played that moment 10, 20 times, hoping I'd misheard. But no, there it was, right between my voice and the lullaby, a small, playful giggle like a toddler hiding under the bed. And it wasn't mine. It couldn't be mine. There are no children in this building, and no one ever visits me. I tried to sleep with the lights on. That didn't help. The moment I drifted off, the song would start again. And worse, I began to feel something in the room with me. The air would go still, cold, heavy, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I'd wake up breathless, heart pounding, drenched in sweat, and once with tears in my eyes. But I hadn't cried. The worst night came unexpectedly. I hadn't slept well in days, and the exhaustion hit me like a wave. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the lullaby to begin, when it suddenly felt like the entire apartment dipped in temperature. I could see my breath in the air. And then the tune started, closer than ever before, right by my ear. I didn't move, couldn't move. Every hair on my body stood straight. The melody filled the room like fog, and in it, I could hear something else, breathing. I wasn't alone. Then I saw her. At the foot of my bed, a shadow shifted, slowly taking shape. A woman, tall, still, with long, stringy hair and a nightgown that clung to her as if damp. She cradled something in her arms. I couldn't make out what, but she rocked it gently as the lullaby warped into a sad, aching moan. I couldn't scream. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her head turned, slowly, as if every movement strained her, and, though I couldn't see her eyes, I felt them, cold, hollow, accusing. And that's when I broke free. I leapt out of bed and turned on every light, panting, heart about to explode. But the room was empty. The shadows retreated. She was gone. The only trace left behind was a faint scent in the air. Baby powder. I didn't sleep at all that night. I tore the apartment apart, looking for anything at all that might explain what was happening. That's when I found the loose floorboard, and what was buried beneath it would change everything I thought I knew about this place. The floorboard was warped and loose, tucked just beneath the edge of my bed, the very place where I'd felt her presence the most. My hands trembled as I pried it up, wood splintering softly under my fingertips. Beneath it lay a yellowed envelope, brittle with age. The corners crumbled as I pulled it free, and a faint scent of mold and dust drifted into the air. On the front, in faded ink, were 2 words, "To Margaret." I didn't recognize the handwriting, but something about it made my stomach twist. I opened the envelope carefully and unfolded the fragile letter inside. The handwriting was frantic, looping, chaotic, nearly illegible in places. It wasn't long, but every word felt soaked in desperation. The letter spoke of a missing child. A baby boy. The writer, presumably a mother, pleaded for forgiveness, lamenting that she couldn't protect her son. She mentioned the dark thing that came in the night. Something she couldn't stop. Something that took her baby. She wrote of guilt, grief, and a relentless need to make things right. That name, Margaret, burned into my brain. Was she the one I'd seen? The shadow at the foot of my bed? The lullaby's source? I needed answers. I dove into online archives, scouring every record I could find about the building. It took hours, days, maybe, but I finally found her. An old newspaper, clipping dated 1957, a tragic story. A woman named Margaret Ellison, who had lived in my very apartment. Her infant son had vanished without a trace. The police suspected she'd suffered a breakdown, but no body was ever found. No closure. Just silence. Margaret had been institutionalized and died in that asylum, insisting to the end that her baby had been stolen, that she still heard him crying in the walls. It was like the past had seeped into the present, leaking through the cracks of time. After that, the lullabies changed. They weren't just songs anymore. They were cries, whispers, pleas. I'd wake in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, sure I had just heard a baby screaming or a woman softly sobbing beside my bed. The apartment felt alive with her. Grief, every creak of the floorboards echoing her loss. One night, I awoke standing by the window, hand on the latch. I didn't remember getting out of bed. The cold air seeped through the glass. My breath clouded the pane. And for a brief, horrifying moment, I saw her reflection in the glass beside mine. Margaret, watching me. Her eyes bottomless pits of sorrow. Her arms empty. That's when I understood. This wasn't about scaring me. She didn't want me to leave. She wanted me to stay. Forever. To become part of the lullaby. To be what she had lost. The final night, everything reached its peak. The lullaby didn't drift in. It screamed. It echoed in every wall, every corner. A shrill demand that cut through my mind like knives. I staggered through the apartment, screaming back, begging it to stop. I'm not your baby. I'm not him. But then I saw her, one last time. She stood in the doorway, her arms cradling something wrapped in a decayed, stained blanket. Her lips moved, whispering the words I had come to dread. Give him back. I collapsed to my knees, sobbing. I don't have him. I never did. Her expression twisted, anguish and rage entwined, and the entire room seemed to shudder. But suddenly, it stopped. She was gone. Silence returned, but not peace. Because every night since, I still hear the lullaby. Faint. Just outside the door. Waiting for me to sleep. Do you hear it too? That soft hum behind the silence. The lullaby that starts when the lights go out. If you've heard it, even once, don't ignore it. She's still searching. And if you listen closely, she might think you're the one she lost. Tell me below. What did you hear last night?